You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the questions.
Well, I answered your question,
No, you
and
didn't.
you didn't like my answer because
did
you
not
don't know what
answer the
Loper Bright is,
question.
because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman,
because
is
you're
this
asking
answer
me,
the question?
you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut did not come to this hearing with outrage alone. She came with numbers, agency language, and a specific record. She said Trump's EPA had shed 20% of its staff. She pointed to research cuts, including the Office of Research and Development. Then she read the EPA's own words. Climate change is real and happening all around us. She tied that record to Connecticut. Heat waves, floods, damaged homes, school closures, and rising costs. Across from her was Zeldin, Trump's EPA administrator. And when DeLauro asked whether the agency was abandoning its duty, Zeldin reached for the law. Section 202, Loper Bright, the Major Questions Doctrine. What followed was not just a budget hearing. It was a fight over the mission of the EPA.
Climate change is harming our health and our environment, but is also harming Americans financially. This administration, however, is running the playbook on making the problem worse, focusing on policies that are handouts to the fossil fuel companies, like reversing the 2009 greenhouse gas endangerment finding, rolling back fuel emission standards for motor vehicles, and reducing methane leak monitoring requirements. The budget proposal reads like a climate change denier's manifesto. When climate change is flooding our streets, poisoning our air, driving up healthcare and disaster costs, how can the EPA justify abandoning that duty to protect Americans to appease polluters under the false flag of economic growth?
Following the law, Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, where does it say anything about fighting global climate change? Loper Bright, Supreme Court case, you familiar with it?
No, I maybe others are. I'm not, but let me ask.
But that's really important. As a member of Congress, Loper Bright says that we, as an agency, don't have the authority to get creative if Section 202 of the Clean Air Act.
No, but you don't have. Excuse me. You do not have the right to say climate change does not exist. That it's a hoax, and that's where this administration is coming from.
I understand you're upset that you don't know what Loper Bright is. Do you know what the major policies doctrine is?
I'm upset because
you know what the major policies doctrine is.
You know what, let me just
You're a
say
member
this
of
to
Congress. You should know.
Well, you have moved from someone who defended the environment to all of a sudden
being very defensive about not knowing the two biggest landmark Supreme Court cases of the last year with regards to your question.
You are very defensive about changing your policy and your positions with regard to the environment.
Okay.
Now, you just tell
Do you want me to tell you what the two biggest Supreme Court cases are of the last few years?
This is what I want you
Michigan
to tell
versus
me.
EPA.
Whoa.
West Virginia versus EPA.
You know, you're here because you need money from us. So halt for the second and wait for the questions and answer the questions.
Well, I answered your question,
No, you
and
didn't.
you didn't like my answer because
did
you
not
don't know what
answer the
Loper Bright is,
question.
because you don't know what the major policies doctrine is,
Chairman,
because you're asking me about Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and you don't read it. You don't know what it says.
Listen, and what you want to do is to deny.
No, I actually read the law. I do my homework.
Really?
You're just somebody who likes to have the microphone on. You know what I have to do? I read the law.
No,
I read the
Chairman,
Supreme Court
I don't have to
cases.
listen to this, and I would say
No,
this,
what you should do
that
for your
this-
constituents is actually read statute.
This budget is at real risk.
Read
Let
your
me tell
Supreme
you,
Court.
This is the Appropriations Committee.
Oh,
you come here.
You care about science? Now you're threatening to defund it?
Oh my God! No, you don't fund
because
science.
you don't know what Loper
You
Bright
are
is.
climate
Because you don't know what the
deniers.
major policies
You are
doctrine is. Your
climate
message
deniers.
to our folks at the EPA is that you want to
I don't
defund
have
us.
to listen to this BS.
The BS. You think I made up these cases?
Yeah, I think you have made up a whole
I
lot of
made
BS.
up Loper Bright. I made up West Virginia versus EPA. I made up Michigan versus EPA.
Woe is right.
What you just watched was not a normal budget exchange. It was a collision between two records. Rosa DeLauro built her case from public harm, heat waves, extreme rain, flooded streets, damaged homes, school closures, higher health and disaster costs. She was not treating climate as a slogan. She was treating it as evidence. Then Zeldin moved the hearing into a different courtroom. Section 202, Loper Bright, the Major Questions Doctrine, Supreme Court precedent. His answer was not that the damage is imaginary. His answer was that the agency is bound by what the law clearly allows. When an agency says, "We are following the law," the next question is, whose reading of the law and who pays for it? A family watching this does not experience climate policy as doctrine. They experience it when a basement floods, when insurance rises, when the air is harder to breathe. DeLauro kept returning to duty, the EPA's duty to protect Americans. Zeldin kept returning to limits, legal limits, statutory limits, court limits. That is the pattern in the record. One side points to harm already happening. The other points to authority being narrowed. The question is no longer only whether climate change is real. The question is whether the agency built to respond to environmental danger is now being taught how not to respond.
This budget proposes $305 million in total for two revolving funds, an $852 million or 74% cut from the $1.2 billion enacted in 2026. This is under the guise of, quote, encouraging states to take responsibility for local water infrastructure projects, end quote. Quite the encouragement. Overnight, states face massive cuts to their budget, would be forced to make impossible choices to fill the gap. Connecticut would go from receiving an estimated $28.2 million in 2026 to only $3.2 million in 2027, an 89% cut. This approach was roundly rejected in the bipartisan, bicameral 2026 agreement for this bill. According to EPA's own assessments, our drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater systems need at least $1.3 trillion in improvements over the next 20 years. Funding that states use for critical purposes. They repair or they upgrade wastewater treatment facilities, well repairs, emergency actions that are needed in the aftermath of natural disasters to make sure residents do not lose access to safe, clean water. Town of Wallingford, Connecticut, use the revolving funds to upgrade their water pollution control facility to help remove phosphorus and put UV disinfection methods in place. Now, easy one. Is it generally more cost-effective to maintain water infrastructure in good standing or wait until it breaks down? For example, a water main rupturing and flooding a community and then clean up the problem.
It's a huge problem in this country that you have aging water infrastructure. We saw with the Potomac Interceptor.
Mm-hmm. Given that states will not be able to plug the budget hole, I don't know if you've taken a look at the budgets of states.
Oh, we studied everything that's in front of us.
Well, I don't know if you studied the state of Connecticut's budget. What is your plan for communities when they inevitably suffer failures in their water systems, which is going to happen?
With all due respect to all of the amazing initiatives that you call congressionally directed spending, and we see firsthand that a lot of the projects that we're administering includes a lot of very good use as members of Congress set out in their desire to have this congressionally directed spending included in appropriations. We don't include that in our proposal. How much you might choose to raid the SRF on congressionally directed spending is a decision that Congress makes as you go through your deliberative process. I'm not saying that, passing judgment on individual projects. No, actually, I'm not. But I'm saying I don't ask for your earmarks for you. That's a process that you all have. You're not going to see that in the president's FY27 budget. You're not going to see congressionally driven set-asides. The SRF fund would be flowing as a revolving fund if it wasn't continuously rated for earmarks and set-asides.
I see.
Well, you're the ranking member of the Appropriations Committee. You should understand that.
Tell me about it. And I introduced community projects a number of years ago.
Right, and I could sit here trashing them, but I'm not. You have a process.
Because members would not, they were designed for a purpose because, let me just tell you, you got an 89% cut to the state revolving loan fund. You can't tell me that 89%.
And I'm helping you with your math.
Is going to community.
Right,
projects.
and I did not ask for your earmarks for you.
Hell no, God knows, listen.
Right, exactly.
We fund, we want, IIJA had huge investments in water projects. CPFs in water infrastructure. We don't raid the state revolving loan fund.
Yes, you do, absolutely.
No, we do not.
100%. That's your congressionally directed spending. You're not giving them out as loans. You're just taking the money out of the SRF and you're giving them to local communities. By the way, I'm not passing judgment on what you choose to say has merit, because you're making the ask on behalf of your constituents. But that's exactly what you're doing. You're taking money out of it and you're giving it to a local community. So it's no longer revolving. It's no longer a revolving fund when you take money out for set-asides and earmarks.
The second clip leaves climate theory and moves into pipes under people's streets. Water infrastructure is not abstract. It is what happens when a treatment plant fails, when a water main ruptures, when sewage systems overload, when a town must choose between repairs it cannot afford and risks it cannot ignore. DeLauro's numbers were specific. She said the budget proposed $35 million total for 2 revolving funds. She called it an $852 million cut, or 74%. For Connecticut, she said the drop would be from $28.2 million in 2026 to $3.2 million in 2027, an 89% cut. She placed that against EPA's own assessment. Water systems need at least $1.3 trillion in improvements over 20 years. Zeldin did not deny aging water systems are a major problem. He shifted the frame to congressional mechanics. He argued the state revolving fund is weakened when Congress directs money into local projects because those dollars stop revolving as loans. That answer matters, but it does not solve the public problem. Families do not live inside a budget category. They live where the water either runs clean or it does not. If Washington cuts the fund, blames the process, and waits for states to fill the hole, who is responsible when the system fails? On the record,